So, as full spoiler, we know that means Shireen, and fuck you,
Yeah,
Renly.
fuck you, Renly.
Fuck you, Renly, hard. You're a son of a bitch.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Brotherhood Without Manners. I thought I messed that up. I pulled a U for a second.
It's tough, right?
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Brotherhood Without Manners, a full spoiler reread podcast of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, starting with the Game of Thrones. I'm Zach, joined by Day Thing.
I'm Nate.
Him. That guy.
What up, guys?
He is not having my antics today.
He's just fuck. Just stop for 2 minutes.
Oh.
So if you're new with us, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
What up?
We are full spoiler. We'll say that a few times.
Happy June, as by the time you'll be hearing this, it will be the 3rd of June. And so summer's right around the corner.
This future shit confuses the hell out of me.
Hope you got some sweet plans ready. Pew, 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 pew. And hopefully you're not too disappointed with the ending of the show, however that ends. So, we here... What?
However it ended.
Ends ended, you know, whatevs.
We're recording this early, so...
As they well are aware.
Not
by
if they're
this
new.
point.
We were talking to the new
listeners.
listeners.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Get off
Sorry,
your shit.
new listeners.
See? If you're returning, welcome back. Glad to have you. This episode, we are reading chapter 27, Ned 6. But last week, if you joined us...
We were reading John 4.
Jacob Jingleheimer Smith?
I don't know,
I
dude.
don't fucking know. All right.
And John had met a new friend in that of...
a new brother.
Excuse the fuck out of you. I was doing my recap. John meets a new friend out of one Samwell Tarly, who comes to the wall fat and scared and eventually shamed by all the men in the yard until John gets them all to agree that they're going to protect Sam. And a little threatening from Ghost and Rast and John and Gren and Pip help sort of smooth that over. And Sam ends up joining their little posse, and it's kind of heartwarming. And then... when Sam says that he's never had a friend, that's when John very dramatically says, "No friend, we're brothers."
Is that your recap?
Yep.
You done?
Mm-hmm.
I found it dry.
Cool.
Suck it.
Yeah, I don't care what you think.
So, this week, like I said, Ned 6, and Ned is at a small council meeting.
Yeah.
He's meeting with some of the fellas, I guess him and the fellas are meeting with
Yeah, you
one
made
man.
that, much more casual and chill than it actually is. Ned is listening to the bitching of the city watch's commander, Janos Slynt. And he's saying that it's the hand's tourney that's causing all the trouble, my lord. And Ned winces and corrects him. The king's tourney, the hand wants no part in it, I assure you. And which I think is kind of just a funny response. It's call it what you will, my lord. I don't really fucking care what you call it.
Shit what it's called.
But we need more men. And he says that knights have been pouring into the city since the announcement of the tourney, along with free riders and crafters
There's just
and
a
merchants
shitload
and
of
whores
people.
and thieves.
Yeah.
And in the heat, it was bad enough. But now with all these people, just last night they had a drowning, a tavern riot.
What's a riot?
I don't know. It's like a city crier, but they rye.
But they can't see?
There you go.
Because
Sure.
there's no C at the beginning, so it's Ryer instead of Crier.
I hate you.
Hey, man, if I have to break down the joke, that's your fault.
They had a drowning, a tavern riot, 3 knife fights, a rape, 2 fires, robberies beyond count, and a woman's head was found in the Great Sept in the Rainbow Pool, and no one seems to know who it belongs to or how it got there. And this is when we learn that Renly's not really sympathetic to this cause. He speaks up saying, "If you can't keep the peace, Janos, perhaps we should anoint a Lord Commander who can."
Renly's having nothing.
Yeah, Renly's just
He don't
having
give a
fun.
shit.
And stout and this is when we get the description of Janos Slynt. Stout and jowly. Janos Slynt puffs up like an angry
I like
frog.
jowly.
His bald head reddening. So he's quite the character looking, and he puffs up at Renly's insult, I guess. And he says that he needs more men. He doesn't have enough men.
Yeah, so Ned,
Practical Ned.
Yeah, thinks, he asks him how many, as many as we can get, dude. We're struggling here. So Ned says that he will make sure that Littlefinger has given them enough coin to hire 50 new guards.
Well, as he's thinking this, Ned's also ruminating on the fact that, of course, Robert's not here. He elected to not come to this council, as he did many others. Surprise, surprise. So Ned has to speak for him. And he tells Baelish that he will find the coin to hire 50 more men.
Baelish is like, will I? And Ned's like, yo, you found 40,000 for the prize for whoever wins this tournament. You can find enough money to hire some guards to protect the shit during this fucking tournament.
And keep the king's peace, yeah.
And
Ned also says that he will offer 20 men from his own household guard to help Janos Slynt until the crowds from the tourney recede and leave the city. So Janos thanks him and takes his leave.
He dips.
And Ned turns to the council expressing his desire to just be done with this tournament and everything about it. But Pycelle speaks up saying that
they think about the economy and how it
the realm prospers from events such as these. It gives the great a chance at glory and the lowly a respite from their woes. And Littlefinger adds in, and it puts many a coin in many a pocket.
Yeah, and so that leads to the conversation of brothels and Renly commenting about how Stannis tried to ban that.
Yes,
completely.
Stannis tried to outlaw him. Robert wasn't pleased.
Now, that's a very important thing to note right here, that Stannis, he wants nothing to do with whorehouses. They're shameful, sinful, bad places in his eyes, and not okay.
But King Robert, obviously, wouldn't have that, and Renly even wonders how Stannis ever got his ugly little daughter. He goes,
which is fun.
And he said, yeah, absolutely.
And it's also
your niece, Renly, you mean?
So, as full spoiler, we know that means Shireen, and fuck you, Renly.
Yeah, fuck you, Renly.
Fuck you, Renly, hard. You're a son of a bitch.
And so, he says, describing Stannis, he says he goes to his marriage bed like a man marches to a battlefield, a grim look in his eyes, and determination in his duty. We get this great picture of Stannis, and I love it. But Renly's sort of a douchebag to his niece. And Ned sort of wonders on his own when Stannis will return to Dragonstone, or return from Dragonstone. But Ned's done with it anyway.
Yeah, Littlefinger makes some jokes, but he excuses himself and is that's that.
He goes back to the Tower of the Hand where Harwin is guarding the door. And Ned tells him to summon Jory and to tell his father to saddle his horse and have it ready for Ned to leave. And it says that he says this pretty roughly to Harwin, and it says that the Red Keep and the Hand's tourney were chafing him raw, and that Ned yearned for the comfort of Catelyn's arms, the sounds of Robb and Jon crossing swords in the yard, and for the cold days and the cool nights of the North.
He misses home.
Yeah.
Is basically
he's getting homesick. So he goes back to his chamber, and he's waiting for Jory, and he washes himself and changes out of his clothes.
And things get interesting.
And he starts looking at the book, and it says that Pycelle was right. It is a ponderous fucking read. It was written a long time ago, but Ned is convinced that Jon Arryn asked for it for a reason. So there is some truth buried in these brittle yellow pages. Right. If only he could find it. So he immediately,
which is great,
opens to the Lannisters.
So besides the fact that it just happens to be the Lannisters, while Ned doesn't pick up on this, George Martin is throwing this shit in our face coming up.
The lineage stuff.
All the sorts of stuff right now.
So Ned immediately goes to the Lannisters because he believes something's afoot due to Lysa's letter. So he's looking at their lineage, which is mistake number one. Because as we know...
Kind of.
Well... It is, and
it's going to
help confirm, Joffrey, but he's really looking for the proof.
The proof and evidence, not the seeds that are going to
he's hoping that, something's going to jump out at him on the Lannister pages. And we get a description that the Lannisters were descended from Land the Clever, from the Age of Heroes. And
this is what's important, is it says that there's one of the tales that he reads or he recounts that he knows of Land the Clever, because he basically decides that Land the Clever is essentially the South and Casterly Rock's version of Bran the Builder.
Yep.
But there's way more songs about Land the Clever. Mm-hmm. He's a much more popular and, pleasing type. And so one of those stories is that he stole gold from the sun to brighten his hair.
Yeah.
And so Ned actually has this thought that the Lannisters have bright golden hair because of this descendant.
Yeah.
The Lannisters have bright golden hair. And it's just funny that like he even thinks this story because he's looking at the Lannister stuff and it still doesn't click yet.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was cool. That
So he's interrupted on his musings by a knock at the door, and it's Jory. And so Ned closes the book and tells him to come in, and he tells Jory that he's promised 20 men to the City Watch, and Jory is to choose who and give command to Alan. And then Ned asks if Jory has found the stable boy. Jory says that he didn't, but everything that he got out of, I think it was not the stable boy, but someone else, like the horse master.
So the stable boy had nothing.
It's
good.
all, it was all of little use, and the worst thing of all is that this is the last of the 4 people that Littlefinger had turned
And basically all the other ones have been very similar situations, just absolutely nothing coming
Sir Hugh was
them.
a dick. He
recently knighted, so he's just got this arrogance about him.
He said he would be pleased to talk to the Hand and receive him, but he's not going to be questioned by a captain of the guards, and Ned thinks even one 10 years his senior and 100 times better swordsman than he. The serving girl, Ned thinks, had at least been pleasant, but again, she offered little. The pot boy, who knew some kitchen gossip, had some interesting things to say. And I listed some here.
I listed them all. I'm very excited.
All right, if you list them all, hit it.
So the pot boy, and these are all just in passing, because Jon Arryn never spoke directly to him. He's never actually held a conversation with Jon Arryn. These are just things he happens to notice.
So some rumors, some lies, some truths, untruths.
And so the first thing is that Jon Arryn had been quarreling with the king. Now, I actually don't think that that's that big a deal.
I think it's true, but I think it's very minor.
I think it's very common for those two to be quarreling and disagreeing.
Jon Arryn, I believe, regularly acted as Robert Baratheon's conscience.
Yeah, being that father figure, that
so
uncle
I think
and
there
brother.
was definitely some butting of the head, but Robert would always...
The next thing, which I think was fairly important, was that he was going to have his son fostered at Dragonstone.
Yes, with Stannis.
Which... especially after we just had the look at Stannis from Renly and Littlefinger in the Small Council.
Stannis is a hard man.
He's a brutal man, and there's, his daughter's this ugly little girl. And so at this point, we technically don't know whether that's physical. I mean, we know it's a full spoiler. Whether it's a physical or just a Joffrey ugly. Yeah. Just that inside. So the next thing is that he had taken a great interest in hound breeding. Yeah. This is the key. Right there's the key. So that right there clearly is he's not interested in hound breeding whatsoever. It's, I feel like, learning the genetics and how they cross and what leads to what color dogs and it allows for that breeding, and so he can compare that to the genes of humans.
Yeah,
so that's why he has the lineage.
See if there's any sort of pattern to it. Yeah.
So then he also hears that Jon and Stannis had a new armor made, or we're looking into it with polished silver chest plate, I believe it was, with the moon of the pearl, half moon with the raven. It's the House Arryn sigil. Yeah. But a very ornate.
Well, again, like the
chest plate.
The big sort of surprise of that one was that Stannis went with him to do this. Is that Lord Arryn was having this commissioned, but Stannis himself went with him.
Yeah. And then we'll get a little more, and we can technically bring it up now as well, that Jon Arryn was not one for flashy garments. He's like the new age rappers, flashing all their ice and walking around like they're hot shit. That's not Jon Arryn stuff. Like, he's OG, so he's gonna just do what gets the job done, basic mail or whatever it may be. And Stannis has no reason to accompany them.
Yeah, Ned asked Jory if there was anything else of note, and Jory just says that the lad had sworn that Lord Jon was as strong as a man half his age, and that he often went riding with Lord Stannis. And Ned thinks Stannis again, because he finds it curious and he thinks that Jon and Stannis were always cordial but never friendly. And while Robert rode to Winterfell, Stannis completely removed himself from the capital and sailed to Dragonstone. And so Ned wonders like where Jon Arryn and Stannis were going on these rides. Yeah. So Jory says that the boy said that they visited a brothel together, and Ned is dumbstruck at this. There's no fucking way in hell. Everyone knows that Robert's lusts are just insatiable, so him visiting a brothel, but Jon Arryn and Stannis Baratheon, he even says Stannis was a different sort of man. 1 year younger than the king, but utterly unlike him. Stern, humorless, unforgiving, grim in his sense of duty. Stannis is not the motherfucker going to a brothel to be getting laid. Stannis is going to a brothel for information. Is number 2 that we should be picking up on here. Jon Arryn's looking into genetics and breeding, and he's got Stannis' interest in this as well for some strange reason. They're visiting a brothel together. They're visiting an armorer together. As we know, they're visiting the different bastards of Robert, and it's just, Martin, it's just so good. So Ned asks which brothel. The boy doesn't know, but this is when Ned gets kind of pissed and says that the gods are vexing us at every turn. Everyone who might actually know the truth of Jon Arryn's death is now thousands of leagues away because Lysa Arryn decided to dip out.
Right, because they took, Jon Arryn and Stannis took 3 guards with them every time they would go to these brothels, but those guards went with Lysa.
Yeah.
And so on top of, the Meister, was it Coleman or something?
Yeah.
And then, all the others that have disappeared, and so he's stuck just fucked, man. So
Jory asks if he's going to summon Stannis back from Dragonstone, and Ned decides not yet, not until he has a better understanding of what's going on and where Stannis himself stands. Stannis, right now it seems like, from Ned's perspective, Stannis fled.
Yeah, right now he's the wild card because we don't know whether he's fleeing. Ned's not sure if he's
afraid.
If he's afraid, if he had something to do with anything.
Ned finds it really hard to imagine what it is that could frighten a man like Stannis Baratheon, who withheld the siege of Storm's End for, yada, yada, yada. But Ned asks for his doublet, and
he wants the nice one, basically.
Yeah, he wants to stand out. He wants people to know who he is when he shows up.
He wants his status to be recognized.
Jesus, Ned. And so
then he goes into this little story as Jory fetches his nice, direwolf sigil doublet with, silver-lined fur shit. It's white and black.
Yeah, Jory tries to point out that Renly is brother to the king, as is Stannis, so maybe Renly might know something, but Ned then throws back that Renly wasn't invited on these trips with Jon Arryn and Stannis. It was just Jon Arryn and Stannis. And Ned isn't really sure what to make of Renly with his friendly ways and his easy smiles. And then he thinks of, this interesting encounter just a few days past where Renly pulls Ned aside and shows him this exquisite gold rose locket. And inside, in the style of Mirish painting, I don't know why that's important, but it is, there's a mini portrait of a lovely girl with doe eyes and a cascade of soft brown hair.
And Renly anxiously is asking if Ned recognizes the girl.
Yeah.
Or
if it reminds him of anyone.
Or if it reminds... Right. And so Ned's like, nah, I don't.
And Renly seems disappointed when Ned just shrugs for an answer, and not really. And this is when Renly says that this maid is Loras Tyrell's sister, Marjorie, my girl. And...
He doesn't say my girl. Zach says
my girl. Yeah, it's my girl. But... he says that there are those who thinks that she looks like Lyanna Stark. And Ned's a little bit amused by this and tells him no. But Ned thinks, could it be that Renly, who very much so looks like a younger Robert, has now developed a fancy for someone he believes looks like a younger version of Lyanna Stark?
So what do you actually think is the...
I believe that this is Renly's plot here, where I don't think Renly's necessarily dumb. I think he knows some shit is up. I think he wants to marry Marjorie to Robert. I think he wants to try to convince Robert to leave Cersei and actually...
So I had kind of had this feeling that he's not necessarily on board. Well, so we'll find out later that Loras is his friend.
Yeah.
Very close friend.
Exactly.
And so he's very interested in his line and his, best friend's line.
Yeah, he wants to bring the Tyrells into the fold.
Right,
yeah.
He wants them to be in power also. So he's checking to see if Marjorie looks enough like Lyanna to where he can go, hey, Robert.
Look at this girl.
Look at this girl who looks just like
Your
Lyanna.
obsession, yeah, exactly.
Like, you should go get her, and so that would lead to Cersei being done with, the Lannisters being done with, so...
Yeah. So... The thought just strikes Ned as queer, the whole thing with the locket and everything, but he doesn't really give it much thought. And Ned begins dressing and continues dressing and says that maybe Stannis will return for the tourney, and Ned thinks that it's not bloody likely. And this is when Ned buckles on his long sword and Jory clasps the cloak on his shoulders with the hand of the kingpin. And then we get, as you mentioned earlier, that Jon Arryn isn't one much for the fancy armor with ornaments and everything, and armor is for practical use, not decoration. But maybe he changed. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the first man who's changed since coming to the capital. But
i.e. Robert.
But Ned doesn't really think that likely. So Jory asks if he can do anything else, and Ned tells him it's probably time. He started visiting some whorehouses to try to gather some information as to which one that boy was at, or where Jon Arryn and Stannis have been. And Jory grins, saying, oh, that'll be hard to convince the men to do. And they leave.
Right. So then Ned gets on his favorite little horse, and he takes a trot through King's Landing in the same fashion that's going to lead to him getting ambushed by Jaime Lannister.
He's got 2 men accompanying him, and they go under the King's Gate and into the city. And Ned keeps checking behind him as he goes. He is paranoid as shit, and it's mainly because of Varys the Spider and his little birds. He feels like they're
Ned, at
everywhere.
this point, you don't even need to look.
They're
those people that you're riding by, they're watching you.
And Ned thinks that Tormund, and Desmond had left early this morning to take up positions on the route that they were to take and watch for anyone following them. But even with that, Ned's still uncertain. And Ned, that's not going to help. Your Northmen just stick out, buddy. You're better off just especially you wearing, he specifically wants to wear the Stark sigil to be seen, and then he's tripping out about being, he's so contradictory in the way he does things in this city, and it's when you think about it, it's no surprise about what happens to him, because he's
it's very blatant how naive he is towards just about everything.
Yeah.
And the way he's raising his children, everyone, loves to give Honorable Ned the he's the hero, he's the greatest person, he's the most honorable. He's not really that great of a parent. He's in his own ways, he's pretty terrible also in certain aspects of the parenting and of being because of his, we discussed it in our very first Bran chapter when he's beheading Garrett, about how there's just this hierarchy that it didn't matter what Garrett said right there, Ned was taking his head off.
Yeah.
There was no talking his way out of it. And going to King's Landing, people are going to try and talk their ways out of things.
Yeah.
And they're going to make the lies. They're going to change things. And he's not willing to accept that. And he loses his fucking head because of it.
Yeah. So they come and they enter the Street of Steel near the Mudgate. And Ned watches as a column of riders pull up to the Mudgate. And a long black banner is riding through, and it's all ripply and nice, and it's a night sky that's slashed with purple lightning. And the guy starts shouting, "Make way for Lord Beric!" And of course, now Beric's going to start scratching at the door because he thinks I'm calling him.
Yep.
And so this is when we get our first glimpse of Beric Dondarrion. I almost called him Dogdarrion.
Beric Dondarrion.
Beric Dondarrion rides in, and it says that close behind the banner, the young lord came himself, a dashing figure with red and gold hair and a black satin coat dusted with stars.
Beric Dondarrion is a star.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. So somebody shouts out, "You here to fight in the hands tourney, my lord?" And Beric Dondarrion shouts back, "Here to win the hands tourney," and the crowd cheers. And Ned turns onto the Street of Steel. He's not
having the shit.
And they follow the winding path up the long hill, and the higher up the hill they go, the bigger the buildings get, the richer and of course the man they wanted is at the very top of the hill.
Yeah. So he approaches this house, and so what we see here is something I had done in the past, some very serious theory crafting about all these parts coming up.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of theories about a lot of this stuff, and I don't technically think it has any more implications than just the base, black and white type, just contrasting.
Yeah.
And so he comes up and he arrives at the house. He was traveling. The doors are a hunting scene carved out of ebony and weirwood. So they're a very dark side and a very light side. Yeah. Light wood and dark wood. And I just love the imagery in that yin-yang style doorway.
And he enters, and he meets Tobo Mott.
Well, so there were the 2 guards outside.
Oh, there are. Yeah, you're still in the description. Okay.
Yeah, and so the 2 guards were fashioned in some steel armor that was red, and it transformed them into a griffin and a unicorn. Any that finger in any of your ticklers?
John Con.
So I've also read a lot of stuff there. I think that it's kind of just stating, these may have, because we don't know how early Martin had certain ideas in his head necessarily. So this is pretty early on for him to be throwing around John Connington, but at the same time, if he had an idea that Griffin's Roost might be coming back at some point. Get that. So
I mean, what
there.
are we inferring from that?
No, I don't know. And that's the thing.
Jon
is
Con fucking saved Gendry and entered Gendry in here,
maybe.
And so there was a statue erected for him.
Well, it's not it's just the armors and stuff that make it kind of look that way, and so it could just be an armor that's for sale that has never gotten picked up, or,
I don't know.
Who knows? Who the fuck knows?
It's straight up says statues.
Okay, so they're statues with armor, aren't they? Or are they actually...
I would believe that they have armor on. Yeah, that's... But
whatever.
IDK, I digress. Ned heads inside.
And there's a little serving girl in there.
And yeah, and Ned tells her to summon the master. And he meets Tobo Mott here. And Tobo Mott tells her to fetch some wine for himself in the hand and sends her away. And he begins... just sort of blustering over himself to impress the Hand of the King, offering him armor, offering him arms for the Hand's tournament that's coming up. And he says that there's no craftsmanship equal to mine in all the 7 kingdoms. My work is art.
Yeah, he just bragging and boasting.
Ned's just sitting there sipping his wine and
so
lets
we
this
also
dude go.
We do learn that he's also one of the very few men that knows how to work Valyrian steel.
Yeah, as he keeps going, he says that the Lord of Flowers buys his armor here, which we know is Loras Tyrell. Renly himself buys his armor
which is
here,
the armor that we had,
which is the
antlered stag helm that we had seen back
with the
in
green
Sansa's
enamel,
chapter.
yep,
Mm-hmm.
and says, so perhaps or maybe the Hand needs a new blade, and that's when he says that he had learned to work Valyrian steel in the forges of Qohor as a boy, and only a man who knew the spells. This is what Ned thinks. He doesn't say this, but only a man who knew the spells could take old weapons and forge them anew. And so Ned asks him, did you happen to make a falcon helm for Lord Arryn? And this one we start getting into the stuff. Mott pauses for a second and says that the Lord Hand did call upon me with Lord Stannis, but they did not honor me with their patronage, meaning they didn't buy shit. So Ned looks at him without saying anything, and Ned thinks that he had found sometimes silence yielded more than questions.
It's his first good...
intelligent thought?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Mott does continue. They had asked to see the boy, so I took them to the forge. And Ned has no idea who this boy might be, but says, I should like to see him too.
Me too. That's why
I'm here. And so Mott gives him a cool, careful look and says, as you wish, my lord, with no trace of his former friendliness.
Yeah.
He closes up here, which is just interesting. But... so he takes Ned out the rear door, and they go across a narrow yard to a large, cavernous stone barn where the forging and smithing is done. And there's a ton of people in here, and as soon as the doors open, the hot air made Ned feel like he was walking into a dragon's mouth, which I just thought was a fun little descriptor.
Yeah.
But Tobo Mott calls over a tall lad about Rob's age, and he introduces Ned to the boy.
And he describes him as looking hunky as fuck.
Pretty much.
Is how I read
Sullen
the description.
blue eyes, and he pushes back his thick, shaggy, unkempt black hair, sweaty hair.
Super black as ink hair. Just...
and this is Gendry, Mott says, and he's a hard worker. He's a strong lad. And Mott tells...
Boy, show him that helm you made.
Yeah, exactly. And they walk over, and Gendry pulls out the bull's head helmet. And Ned notes that it's unpolished, but it is very good work. And he tells him that and says that he would like to buy it. And Gendry immediately snatches it.
No, son,
it's not for sale. I made it for me. And Tobo Mott is horror-struck. The Hand honors you. You should just give it to him by him asking. And... Gendry says, nah,
nope.
I made it for me.
Nope.
But Ned doesn't care. He's fine. And
so he starts asking what
Lord
Stannis
Arryn.
and Arryn had visited him for, and he basically recounts what happened. They asked him a bunch of questions, and he told them the answers.
Yeah.
So I like that we learn also that his mother was a blonde.
Yeah.
And that's about all we really kind of get into there. It doesn't go too heavy.
He says that they had asked, if he was being treated okay, if he liked the work, who his mother was, what happened to her, and he just says that she had died when I was little, she had yellow hair, she used to sing to me, and she worked at an alehouse. That's all Gendry knows. Yeah. And Ned asks, did Lord Stannis question you as well? And Gendry says, the bald one, no, he just sat there and glared at me like I had gone and raped his daughter.
So, didn't Robert rape his wife or some shit like that, or sleep with his...
There was some weirdness at a wedding a while back, but I think it's mainly just another of Robert's best. Like, I just think Stannis is like, what the fuck?
So
like,
between
another
another
brothel,
one, yeah.
like, result.
So I think that and seeing Robert so much in him just reminds him of, especially, you know, because that's pretty much why he's looking at him like that, because that looks like younger fucking Robert who did do those fucking terrible things to him.
So as soon as Gendry mentions, you know, possibly raping Stannis' daughter, Tobomak just goes off on him, you know, mind your filthy tongue, blah, 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 and tells him to go back to work. And, or doesn't tell him to go back. He just tells him to shut his mouth.
Yeah,
and
Ned grabs him, like, by the chin, and he's like, look at me. Look at me!
Yeah, he tells him to look at him, and he's like, playing with his hair. It's a little weird. But then Ned thinks, yes, like, I can see it now.
And stuff's finally clicking.
And he tells Gendry to go back to work, and he walks back to the house with Tobomak, and Ned asks him who paid for Gendry's apprenticeship fee. And Tobomak says, a lord, very reluctantly. And he said he gave no name, and he wore no sigil on his coat.
So that's after initially he was like, no, nobody.
Yeah,
there was no, I took him, I mean, look at him, he's a big, strong guy.
Yeah, I want to do it for free.
That was like horse shit. You could get any big, strong kid you want, but you still wouldn't without an apprentice fee. Who the fuck paid for the fee? And
yeah, a lord, he gave no name, and there was no sigil on his coat. He paid in gold twice the normal amount, and he said he paid once for the boy and once for my silence. He was stout, not so tall as you, brown beard, and he wore a rich cloak, heavy purple with silver threads, but the hood shadowed his face, my lord.
So I also noted that it said that he was round of shoulder, but his brown beard with a bit of red.
Yeah.
And then, he had the thick, rich purple cloak, velvet, and silver threads. But
thoughts on who this is? John Conn?
So I was also thinking potentially Illyrio could be.
I'm thinking it's Varys.
But Varys was my main one, just mummered up a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
And, that's what I was kind of thinking. But who knows? Like, who knows?
So Ned cuts the bullshit here and says, you know who the boy is. And Tobomak says, my lord, I'm but an armorer. I only know what I am told.
And, it's cool because if you know how to read, that sentence didn't have a question mark. He wasn't asking him anything.
And so he says it again. You know what the boy is. That is not a question, Ned says.
Right.
And Mott says, the boy is my apprentice. And basically who he was before doesn't matter to me. And Ned nods, deciding that he likes this Tobomak.
Yeah, he likes
him. And the guy seems to be pretty simple as far as what he wants from Gendry, that he's just going to let him forge because he's
good
doing
at
good
it,
work.
clearly, and that's that.
Yeah,
and
he's probably making Tobomak
Ned
some
gives
decent
him
money.
makes him an offer that, if Gendry ever decides that the hammer of a blacksmith isn't for him and he wants to be a warrior, he looks like he could be a warrior. So send him my way before you just, send him packing.
Yeah, I'll put a sword in his hand.
Which I think at that point has a lot more to do with him knowing that it's Gendry's bastard, or Robert's bastard, just like, he took Jon on and saw
I think it's basically like if ever you're not wanting him here anymore, send him to me, and I'll look after him in some way, shape, or form. And so Ned leaves, and his guards are still waiting for him outside, and one of them Jax asks him if he found anything. And Ned says that he did as he's mounting up. But then he's wondering what it is Jon Arryn wanted with a king's bastard and why it was worth his life. And this, obviously, in a first read-through, is meant to be the moment it clicks that, oh, this is King Robert's bastard. Obviously, we know this. We know who Gendry is. We know the who's and what's of it.
Surprise!
But, yeah, so Ned finally has an answer to one minor question, which is sort of what it was Jon Arryn was looking into. And
so this is going to lead him on the path.
But it's still even, so far away from the actual deadly truth, which is Joffrey is a product of incest between the queen and her brother.
It's so funny that he doesn't make that. He hasn't made that conclusion, but an
he
hour
was looking
before
at the lineage,
he was, looking at that kind of stuff.
And that's where we leave Ned on his 6th chapter, with only a few left to go.
Every chapter gets... Because I was going to ask you what you thought of the chapter, but, God, it's a fucking good chapter. It's good.
Great. It's just frustrating to watch Ned flounder through this game. And do it so terribly.
Especially, after... Because your first read through, you're looking at him as the protagonist. He's the hero. He's, go Ned. And then we realize this. And so looking at it through this lens, where we're just looking at his folly. We're watching
so
him.
arrogant.
We're like,
you fool.
you stupid
You
son of a
fool.
bitch. We're through the first one. We're like, yeah, you're the man.
No, I mean, I still do love Ned. Like, he represents a lot of good things in this world, but they don't mesh with playing the Game of Thrones, and unfortunately, that's about to encompass all of Westeros. You have to play, even if you don't want to. Even the small folk are fucking playing the game now because it becomes all-out war here soon. So, those were our thoughts. Who's your inductee? You got an inductee? Papa.
I had one, and now that you put me on the spot, I slipped away. It was going to be Jon Arryn, because he did his footwork, man. Like, he was doing his research to make sure he had all his stuff in order so that he could fucking handle that stuff. I think that it's a good idea that Stannis got out of Dodge. I think it would have been a good idea that before Jon Arryn died, he said, hey, Stannis, if anything were to happen, Ned Stark's the man. Ned Stark's the man. But, again, Jon Arryn had no intention of telling Ned. That was all Littlefinger anyway. Yeah. So, but I'm going to give it to Jon Arryn for doing the legwork, finding out, like, all this shit that he knew. You know, he did a lot of...
You mentioned mine. Mine's going to Stannis The Mannis, because he got the fuck out of Dodge. Like, he saw that this was some deadly shit that was going on that they were finding. But I like that it also shows him as practical. Jon Arryn brought this to him, and Stannis was willing to ride out to these brothels, to this blacksmith, and do the due diligence of confirming and doing his research and finding the facts and facing them for himself.
Proclaiming anything.
And he still hasn't. He just took what he knew and went, because he knew that this is volatile shit. I don't know if he straight up knows yet that the incest.
So I think he does personally. How do you prove that? Mm-hmm. Like you how do you go in front of everybody and be like, let me teach you genealogy when I don't have, it's not like that. That's it.
So I think he bounced to Dragonstone to sort of think on, like, how can I present this revelation.
And with Jon Arryn dying, he's going, fuck, I might be next.
Yeah, exactly. We were snooping around, we were seen together, obviously, so shit, there might be a target on my back. So yeah, that's my inductee, Stannis.
Yeah, and I think that he's very Ned-like in his morals and his
rigidity,
right,
of honor,
but I think he's more aware of the game.
Oh yeah,
by far than Ned is.
I think he still detests the game. But
I don't think he
along.
Likes to play it. I don't think he. But yes, he's definitely aware and willing to.
But yeah, those are our inductees. Those are our thoughts. Please send us yours. We would love to know.
Yeah, and next week we'll be reading. Next episode we'll be reading
Catelyn 5.
Cat 5. So send us inductees for Cat 5. I had an inductee for. Oh, never mind. That's for the show that we were. That's a different episode.
Following Cat 5 will also be Sansa 2, so if you want to be really ahead, send us in those.
2. Man, there's a big time jump from Sansa 1 to 2. Because Sansa 1 was way back with Joffrey
on the road,
and Renly and 2, shit.
But yeah, you can reach and send us those inductees at Twitter. We're at Manners Without on Twitter, Facebook.com/Brotherhood Podcast. We're on Instagram at Brotherhood Without. And then we're on iTunes, Spotify. We would really appreciate a rate and review on iTunes if you could do that for us.
Yeah, we're on Stitcher and Breaker and all those other ones as well. Basically, you can find us wherever you download podcasts. Remember, we're Brotherhood Without Manners. And our Patreon. Withoutmanners.com.
We've got some content up there.
Yeah, we have our Mercy Patreon only chapter there. It's patreon.com/withoutmanners. So give that a listen, and we would love to hear what you think about that if you're itching for some more content.
We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you downloading and checking in with us and writing into us and just bullshitting with us. So we're chilling. You're chilling. Everybody's chilling.
It's all good, yo.
And it's all good. And always remember, the tourney puts coins in many a pocket.
Vala de Harris.
Peace.